another read along with Jordana. I'm back. And I'm also back with another guest. Hey! This is Alif. You've maybe seen him before. He's here to do another book review interview with me. Thank you very much for being here today. Tell me, what are you reading?
I recently finished reading the Almanack of Naval Ravikant.
And tell me, what is this book about?
What I got from it, it's an introduction to philosophy from a leader in the venture capital space. He's had a lot of success. He also has a huge delta in the success, and then he comes from a poor background, a single mother household from Queens, New York, and then he made it to basically the heights of Silicon Valley venture capital. It's not that he came from money or had a lot of inborn or silver spoon kind of success. He earned it himself. So I think it's a great intro to philosophy. And then with that comes, some aspects of self-improvement, wealth creation. But it ultimately, I think, is a philosophy book, and it helps you establish certain principles for a successful life, at least according to him.
How does he approach philosophy in his life? What is Naval's philosophy?
He highlights it right at the beginning. I read that it's consider everything, but take nothing as gospel. I think that's true. You want to consider everything and do your research, and because now we live in a time of where all the information in the world, the Library of Alexandria, and he calls it this too, is at your fingertips. So it really helps you consider everything, but also don't take anything as gospel. If a piece of advice worked for someone else, it may not necessarily work for you, because, say, for example, it's your parents, and it worked for them 20, 30 years ago. 20, 30 years ago is a lot of time, especially in this age. 500 years ago, 20, 30 years wasn't a lot of time. Technology wasn't ramping up as quickly as it does today.
Does he have an opinion on the Gospels? Does he take them as gospel?
He actually doesn't go in too much into Western faith. I think he talks a lot about Buddhism, so you've got the Eastern religions. He does go into, I guess this could be also considered religion or school of philosophy, Stoicism. He mentions a book called The Tao of Seneca. And I personally haven't read it, but I have read other books on Stoicism. Bill Irvine's A Guide to the Good Life was my first introduction into Stoicism, and it was a very impactful book for me.
So is he mostly a Stoic, would you say?
Yeah, I think he describes himself in a very interesting way. He calls himself a rational Buddhist or something. He uses a qualifier and then Buddhist to describe himself, and he talks about you don't want to become a monk and shun everything in your life. And then you also don't want to become a hedon who's always looking for the next dopamine hit, right? Because that's what ultimately how the body processes things we enjoy. It's a dopamine hit. You should want what you have and really appreciate what you have.
So what does he say he appreciates?
In the book, I think he appreciates the most important resource that we all have. It's such a finite resource. It's time. It's the longest thing you'll do, but it's also a blink of an eye in terms of the universe. My lifespan, most likely 80, 85 years. Your lifespan, 5 years more than that. You're a woman.
I'm going to live forever.
It's a blink of an eye, but it's also the longest thing you'll ever do, and it's the longest thing I'll ever do our lives. And for that, he really appreciates time. Now, how you spend your time, he says what works for him. He enjoys spending his time not doing what he doesn't want to do, and he loves spending time with his family. I know when I was a teenager, you don't really appreciate the time you have. I know I didn't. And Naval, I think he also goes into it in the book. He says that people lead two lives. One, before they realize they have one life, and then the rest of their lives. I think that component of the importance of time in my life came to me, I want to say, in my early to mid-20s. So I'm 28 now, so maybe 5 years ago. And I liked Naval because he's a South Asian from the same neighborhood that I grew up in, and he also attended the same high school I did. And I like reading about people, who are similar to me, come from similar backgrounds, because again, it just makes the advice that they're giving a little bit more relevant. Like I, would prefer to mentor a South Asian male over, let's say, an East Asian female, right? It would just be different, not because, I don't think I have nothing of value to give to an East Asian female. I just have more in common with a South Asian male. And I mentioned Stuyvesant because, for me, and I assume for Naval too, attending Stuyvesant was an inflection point in our lives. He even says that Stuyvesant is one of those intelligence lottery situations where you can break in with instant validation. You go from being blue collar to white collar in one move. And I think it is an intelligence lottery situation. Stuyvesant, for me, it was actually it was a lottery situation, but it was also a big time sink. The commute was 3 hours, and I actually know I wouldn't have done that. I would have chosen to attend Thompson Harris. So it is Stuyvesant definitely is a lottery situation. This is one exam, whereas Thompson Harris, it's your performance in seventh grade, so it's less like a lottery situation, more of that kind of marathon situation where you prove yourself over a year. So I agree with that it was an inflection point, but I don't agree that it's a great lottery situation because there are other options. And then you go from being blue collar to white collar in one move. I also don't like what he says about going from blue collar to white collar. I think, and he goes on to mention this later in the book. It's about leveraged and unleveraged, and what that means is that you go from being blue collar where you're unleveraged, you're trading time for money, and you will become white collar. You have more leverage, and you're not making that time for money exchange.
What else from the book would you say you don't agree with?
If you ever feel like you're agreeing 100% with someone, there may be a situation where you're maybe blinded for whatever reason, because it's very rarely that you come across someone who thinks like you, and to wholeheartedly agree with someone, it's just so unlikely that there might be something wrong. So I pause. I try to go for that sweet spot between 70 and 90%, usually right around 80%. If I agree with what if someone says 80%, that means I am doing my homework of critical thinking and really processing his or her ideas. So that 70 to 90% range is what I like. That was, but the comments around going from blue collar to white collar, I think, is where it's one of the big points I disagree with him on in the book. Because I don't want to denigrate blue collar work. I think there is scalability in blue collar work. And it's another podcast I listened to, the Sweaty Startup. It talks about how these service-based businesses are low-risk entrepreneurial activities that anyone can really pursue. You don't need to be a fancy Stanford computer science PhD to make it, right? Really making the service business is a lot of things that don't require talent, right? Like showing up on time, being nice to people, being reliable, being honest. It's not something that only like LeBron James can do, right? It's something that anyone can do if you want to do it. Maybe that's the talent that you have to want to be nice, be honest, be able to work hard and show up.
So what would you say is the main takeaway from this book, or maybe your favorite part of the book, or the thing that you agree with the most?
One piece of advice that I began to apply directly after reading this book is to read the foundational text of something. I know, even being an economics major, we never really even considered reading Adam Smith in school, and he is the godfather or father of modern economics. All of us economists or people who majored in econ in school, we've heard the name Adam Smith, we've heard the book Wealth of Nations, but I don't know how many of us actually have read and processed the text. And I'm reading it right now. There's a lot about Adam Smith I right off the bat don't agree with. And I think reading the foundational text is something important. Something else I'm processing right now is I'm reading the Quran, because I've really gotten Islam as from secondary or tertiary sources, family, friends, etc. I never really went to the source of Islam. So I'm reading that too. And then Origin of Species, another foundational text. And I know there's some debate around who actually is the father of the idea of evolution. There's another contemporary to Darwin, but I'm reading The Origins of Species by Darwin right now as well. And so that's a piece of advice I took away from the book, is to read the foundational text of a field. So if you're in computer science, maybe read Alan Turing's thoughts behind what he did and why he did it. Maybe read about that World War II era, what he was trying to do.
All right, this has been another read along with Jordana. Thank you to our guest, Alif Alam. We hope to have you back to discuss another book very soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Like and subscribe in the comments. What should we talk about next? Have you read The Origin of Species? I haven't. And I teach biology.